Hello, and thank you for watching the video if you are. This is one I thought I would just create on the basis that a lot of people kind of want more opportunities to practice 40k, play games of 40k. This is obviously a way that it can be kind of achieved, and for a relatively low cost. Currently, the TTS, Tabletop Simulator, is on sale on Steam as of kind of when this video goes live, so it's like half price, so good time to kind of grab it if you haven't already got the program. But yeah, this video is literally going to, as the title says, go through how to kind of use TTS. So first of all, Tabletop Simulator is a program you can buy on Steam. It is quite an old game, as it were, originally kind of used for many other things that were not 40k. It is not designed for playing 40k, but kind of people have kind of adapted it, created assets, and kind of done all that sort of thing to allow you to play games of 40k online. Advantages of using it: you don't have to travel to play. It enables you to play people that aren't in your normal play group. It gives you opportunities to test out units maybe you don't own, or test out different lists before you kind of commit to buying something, or test out entire armies. So there are kind of benefits from a kind of cost saving point of view, and it also allows you to maybe play on terrain you don't own or don't have access to. So it kind of gives you that advantage there. Disadvantages, again, it is a case of you are relying on finding people that you want to play online. You might end up facing a lot more of the kind of the meta competitive builds than you're kind of used to facing, so it's good for giving you exposure to factions that you haven't maybe faced, but you kind of are relying on kind of that level of trust with people. In terms of what you need, obviously a computer. It doesn't need to be overly powerful. However, obviously the newer the computer, the more efficient it will run, because it is nowhere near optimized for playing 40k, so there is quite a lot of resources that get loaded in, but as long as your computer is within, I say, at least the last 10 years, you're going to be fine. It might just be sometimes loading is a little bit longer. Otherwise, there's kind of just a few resources that you'll need to download that are on Steam under the Tabletop Simulators kind of workshop, which I'll show you, and also those will all links to those things will be in the description to kind of help you with getting those. So these are just the ones here. First of all, joining the TTS 40k Discord, which is great. Again, it's a place that you can easily find games. You can also find a lot of other communities kind of have their own Discords that will also have TTS kind of channels that you can kind of find games, arrange games online. The TTS 40k one has the kind of advantage of being very large, so you'll likely always be able to find a game. Whether it's the level of game that you're looking for may vary, but things like Fireside, Team Hivemind, Try Hard, Team England Discord, all those sorts of ones. Art of War, if you sign up for that, has theirs as well. So there's all kind of different places you can find games which you can use. There are then two files which I will just kind of show on the screen for you. These are ones that we'll need to head to the links and kind of download. So the first one is the 40k competitive base map. It just kind of gives you basically your imaginary table. So basically once you head to there, you just click subscribe. It then installs it, and kind of then you have access to it, and I'll show you kind of where you access it from. And then Force.org, which is basically a way of making your army have all its rules attached, which there's kind of that element that it makes life a lot easier for you and your opponent of having model and unit kind of key information attached to them kind of makes things a little bit quicker in that regards. So that one's really useful there. You then have kind of two other options of where you are going to get your kind of list set up, because you need to kind of have the information to put into ForceOrg. So there is either ListForge, which I'll show you this one in a second, which you download as a app, or there is New Recruit, which is online. Both of them kind of do the same thing. So once you've signed up for New Recruit, it's free. Same with ListForge for the basic version, it's free as well. You click onto build. As you can see, I've got several lists. You'd go to create list. Then once you've created a list, here's one that obviously is slightly older. It will load in, and again, similar to anything else, it has kind of the different options for that. If you have a look, you'll be able to find ways of kind of setting this up. But here we have kind of, you just click your character, and then obviously if they have any options, it comes up there. Once you've created your list, you then need to export and yellow scribe. Once you click that, it gives you a code that will come up relevant shortly, and just the ListForge app. There we go. Similarly, I've very quickly created a very small Drakari list just for demonstration purposes. You click and then yellow scribe, and it gives you a code you can copy. You can also, if you use the ListForge app or the New Recruit kind of app page on your phone, you can also do this and then just type the code in. If you're doing it on the desktop, you can just copy paste. So next step is obviously loading TTS. Here we have kind of TTS for you. If I go to the right screen, there we go. Here we have TTS. So what you then need to do is create a game. For this purpose, I'm going to create a single player one. If you are playing with friends, option or other people you don't know, if you go on to multiplayer and you create a server, you then create a server name and you create a password, and you can set it to only have 2 people join. You can make it friends only, so if you only ever want people you know to be able to access the actual server, so friends on Steam, that kind of limits that. Or if you click join, obviously if you are looking for a certain server, if someone tells you, oh, I'm on Chill Zone, which is not a 40k one that someone's created, but you type that in, it will then come up with potentially a password. If we do the first one here, there we go. I then type that password, whatever they've told you it is, it will then join you into the game. So I create my single player one, and kind of this is the first screen you will get if you are setting the game up. If your opponent's already set it up, kind of it makes things a little bit easier for you. I've got a few more different kind of things from my workshop for various other things, but basically the ones I've suggested are the only 2 you really need now. Apologies. So first thing you need to do is, before you play a game, is you'll need to have set your army up in ForceOrg. So you click and load ForceOrg eventually. So as I said, sometimes things do run a bit slow, so in a second it's going to go a bit crazy. But here you can see you've got all the different factions with their lovely faction card. There's also a kind of reference to who has been actually helped with creating this. And then we have down here this section that we'll get to in a second, but is where you create your army effectively. So first step, I'm going to load in Drakari, and it will then begin to populate that middle board. As you can see in the top, it's slowly loading different things in, because there are quite a few assets that it has to actually load in. Again, this will vary from army to army. Some armies will take longer, particularly things like Space Marines, because they obviously have far more units than some of the other armies. Like World Eaters is probably a quicker one to load in. But here we have all the different units. I'm just going to go back to ListForge and click that button again. which, as you can see, list forge here. I click in the export, and then I yellow scribe, and then copy that code, and then I go back to TTS, and down here you've got a button that says launch yellow scribe. You click that, and it asks you to put the code in. So again, there used to be a website that did this, but it's been kind of recreated. There's another one that I haven't shown called Rosterizer. Again, absolutely fine, works perfectly, does the same thing. I just find it a bit clunky for me to use, so that's kind of why I've suggested the other two. Once you've got that, you click it in. It will then do some things. A full list will take a little bit longer, but I've only got 4 units, so it's quite quick. Then what you do is you kind of go and find the models. So here I have Drazar, and again they're all labelled, so you haven't got to guess what's what, but there is all the different models. So I then kind of take them here, and we've got Lilith and Drazar. I then also need an Archon. Where's an Archon? There's an Archon. Sometimes what you'll find is the models aren't updated, particularly if there's a new model that comes out. It may be a case of that it's not made it into the update as yet. As you'll notice here, there is, for the Hellions here, a new model's been put in, so kind of keep an eye out for that, because if it has that, it kind of showcases there is a new model available to use. And then I need Cabalite Warriors. Again, there are, for Cabalite Warriors, a whole host of different options. I'm just going to take this very crazy colourful unit, bring it over here. You don't have to do this, it's just sometimes a bit quicker, just to kind of get it set up, but you can kind of skip this step effectively and bring them over. But here we have this part to then allocate the rules to a model and what you want to showcase when you're playing the game. You click on the model, it goes pink, and then you pick the model, and then you kind of rinse and repeat for each model. If you realise you've made an error, like, oh, I meant to click Drazar but accidentally clicked Lilith, it's fine. If you click again and click again, it overwrites it. We then have the Cabalites here, and I just need to go over, find the right model. I'm going to do kind of very quickly, and apologies for the vast zooming out. I'll try to avoid that. Then, and I might get one of these wrong, I'll kind of do it a little bit quicker, but you click on each one and then kind of, there we go. No, I think that's the wrong one. So again, go back, click, and then find the right one. There we go. Yeah, I don't want lots of birds. Then once your army is kind of selected, all you do is you click create army, and as you can see, it brings those units and puts them together. Let's say I had 3 Cabalite units, it would then spawn the 3 Cabalite units, and you can go through and you can select the 3 Cyberites, allocate a model, the 3 Cabalite Warriors, the 3 sets of Cabalite Warriors, allocate that to a model, so you don't have to do each thing individually. So if you had 3 Venoms in the list, for example, you can click all of the listings in the middle that say Venom, click 1 Venom, and it's done. If you wanted to, say, have a bit more individuality, in this case there's 3 different looks for the Cabalite units, so you could in theory have 3 different looking Cabalite units, but you don't need to. Kind of the next step, once you've done that and you're happy and you've just checked that the models that you've kind of looked for over here are there, it's then time to save the army. One thing that I kind of skipped over is down here you have the bases, because some models aren't on the correct base. So I'm going to bring this 32 mil over, because the Archon model has been updated. If I kind of put them on top of each other and then highlight, there is then the combine tool, and you can kind of combine those together by clicking on them, and then it joins the base together and it doesn't come off. So you just highlight both the new base, and the model, click combine, click on the model, it joins them together. I always take it away from this part here, because I've had a couple of times when I've accidentally joined the entire of this massive grey base plate to the model and had to reload. So just take care with that. I then put him back on to join the rest of the army. I then highlight all the models, and this is how I save my army. Right click on a model, it doesn't matter which one, the only thing this does is it sets the thumbnail based on a picture of that model. Then scroll down, and one other thing, go down and do measure movement. If you click that now, before you save object, it will save you a bit of time later on. So highlight all the models in the army, toggles, measure movement, then go back, click save object. It will then bring you up a list of where you can save the units. I'll show you how, but I've created different folders for the different armies that I use. I'm just going to save it in the root folder for now, and I'm going to call it test. You might call it Cabalite Cartel 1, you might call it Cabalite Cartel and put the date. If you have multiple versions of the list, I tend to go through when there's a update for the data slate and kind of delete any of the old ones that are no longer relevant, just to kind of not end up with too many army lists. So once you've done that, save, and yeah, that's done. Along the top here you then have objects. You can go back, you then have saved objects, and if we go to page 2, as I said, I've got quite a few things. You've then got test, and all you need to do then when you want to load the army in is you drag it out, and as you can see it spawns those models. It spawns them in exactly the position that you saved the object as well. So there are a few things you can do there with that might somewhat be useful, and I'll show you in a minute. So once that's done, that's kind of this finished with. We then go back to games, and then we're going to load up the map. Click load, and then you'll be presented with this screen. Basically your a virtual table. You then have a choice of red player or blue player. It doesn't make a bit of difference other than the red player is the left side and the blue player is the right side of the table. Once you've clicked that, you then kind of assigned this side. As you can see, it's put my kind of name there. You then have over here, if you click on the side that you're on, so if you're the red player, you click and it allocates you to this side of the scoreboard. Very much normal scoreboard. And then kind of, yeah, we'll go through the elements of the table in a second. But you then have the next step, which is obviously choosing the game. Generally, you're probably going to be playing Strike Force, but you might find that you need one of the other ones, which if you just cycle through, it will do that. I'm going to be playing a 1v1 game. I click that. You then have the different maps that are available. So you go in, and let's say we're playing on GW. It will then bring up the different maps that are available. So it has the missions here for chapter approved, and it has this for the different ones as well as the different related maps. So if you've realised you've clicked the wrong one, click recall, puts those all back, and you go, oh, actually I was meant to play this one. Over here you've got the singles War Master missions. You've then got that one, so it's just a nice little resource as a reminder. And again, can just bring those back out. If you right click and search, it then kind of gives you the options there. So I'm going to just drag layout GW1. If you click F on your keyboard, it flips the map over, and then you can kind of load the map in. And then this kind of clears it all out, everything else disappears. What it does say is if you notice that sometimes there's a glitch and some of the cards stay on the table with the different maps or the different options, if you click load on that card again, it will kind of fix itself. But as you can see, it's now brought in layout 1. So we have the terrain set up. It's very quick at setting up terrain once you get used to it, because you don't have to measure anything, it's all done. There are a couple of tables, however, that the terrain doesn't have this really important toggle on, and you can accidentally select the terrain if you're not careful. If you notice a piece of terrain is selected or might move, if you right click on it, toggle and lock, you then can't select it to move it. So that kind of means that it's fixed in place, which makes playing very easy. We then have the next step. We'll go over here. We have this here. Options where Pariah Nexus, because they haven't updated, they haven't changed the name. You have all the different deployments, and kind of can cycle through. You then have the ones that say HS, which is the hidden supplies, so it puts in that 6th objective for you. And again, as you can see, it sets up each deployment, puts the objectives in the correct place, like so, and kind of gives you that there, so it makes that element a bit easier. So we'll leave it on search and destroy. You then have the missions, and again, you can just randomly go through and select. Again, this is just more of a reference. It doesn't. If you don't put this in, it doesn't break the game, but it just kind of gives you that reference to kind of go from. And you can also click a random GW mission, random WTC one, and random UKTC, and it will give you ones that currently exist for that, which it really loves hidden supplies. So that's that. We then have the scoreboard, which we'll come back to. Over here, we then have the secondary cards, which is kind of the next thing I always make sure I do. Whichever ones you're choosing to do, whether it be tactical or 2 of the fixed ones, if you click F on your keyboard to flip them, the 2 that you want, and then click lock in secondaries, it will lock those in. If you click flip the tactical ones, lock those in, they disappear off, and kind of then they place themselves here. The only thing we might struggle with is I can't start the game if I don't force. But that's kind of that warning message there is quite useful, because if your opponent has forgotten to lock their secondaries in, then it will stop you from starting the game and kind of having a bit of an error. So kind of that's the main part there. We then have the scoreboard. We have primary, secondary, and secondary. And then Challenger still exists here because they haven't updated it. So you still have the Challenger deck even though it's not used. And if you wanted to kind of search the missions to choose one without going through them, you click search, you go, oh, I want to play unexploded ordnance for some reason, can drop it in there and just play that way. There is then some useful information, even a charge reroll odds. You know, if you're really thinking about that command reroll, whether it's worth it. You then have some information around the chapter approved, so for playing the missions, if you forget when can I do an action, or why can't I use no prisoners as a fixed mission. And also same for the core rules commentary is kind of here as well. And then WTC scoring, because a lot of people use this to do teams practice, so it's useful to have there as a reference if you are practicing for teams. It's also, in fact, still something myself and another person in Team Hivemind created at the start of the edition. Was kind of a special rules kind of reference library, just the ones that were there, so that's still there if you ever need to check them. Yeah, you then have the dice roller, which is very straightforward. If you pick the dice up, drop it in, it rolls the dice. If you pick these dice, and it tells you how many and kind of the total value, which is both useful and not useful sometimes, because unless you're using the D3 dice, the value will obviously be off. So you can then select all and roll them. You then have down the hit the bottom of here, quite a useful thing. For lethal hits, you can just automatically pull them out. Sustained hits, it will duplicate the dice, and if you have sustained lethal, it will do both sets and duplicate that for you there. Then if you right click, it will do it for if you have crits that go on 5s and 6s, it will do both. As you can see, it's put a 5 up here for a lethal and created a sustained. If you need to reroll dice, and you have this bin here, which is kind of the abyss, quite useful for keeping it tidy. If you need to reroll a dice, if you left click, it rolls only that row. If you right click, it will reroll all dice in that row and below. As you can see, it only rolled the 5 row there if I left click, so it's quite useful there. Then sometimes you might need an ordered roll. Let's say you've got 5 intercessors on a 6-up save and then a captain with a 4-up save. You can do an ordered roll, which, as you can see, goes really well, really badly, sorry, for the intercessors up until the captain then making all his saves. You can roll in 2s if you have certain feel no pain kind of breakpoints to do, or if it's allocations of 2 damage, 3 damage. As you can see, it then groups them to 2s or 3s. So there's kind of some useful things there. And you can also change the colour of the dice if you decide you want different dice, or to change the pips, and it will then spawn those in kind of as you choose them. You can even create your own custom dice, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. Yeah, if people are interested, I can do an update. You then have this kind of helps bar here. Something that some people find useful is this stat helper, which I will show you kind of how to use as well. But what you've then got after that is kind of your importing your army. Here I have my full a full build. There we go. We'll bring this one in because I think this one's. No, I don't know if this one is still legal. I haven't checked it since the kind of rules update. But here we have kind of the different units. And here we have our Venom, which if you hover over a unit, if it's been set up using the way I showed you, it will have their information. So you have their movement, their weapons, their melee, and then kind of the abilities at the bottom. Using a numerical keypad, the one that's kind of like a calculator, if you click the number 1, it will bring up actually the rules selection and kind of give you the details on what those rules look like. You can do that on the opponent's models as well. So kind of without having to ask them, you can kind of have a quick look at its profile. If you're like, oh, what's their toughness? Hover over and it's like, oh, T3, great. So that's quite useful. Another thing you can do, particularly if you've got lots of units that are the same, and again this varies in effectiveness depending on how the model is kind of shown to look up. If you right click, you can see this one called color tint, and going to do that. And now you can see the Cabalites have these wonderful neon blue bases just to help you differentiate. I'd already done it here with the Reavers, so you got the orange and the black squad. Again, it kind of can help with checking visibility of a model. Another thing you can do, if you highlight, if you click that 1 again, you can select a colour down here, such as green, and in this case, because I've coloured it all, it kind of made it go a bit funny. So look, and again, because of the way the models have been generated, it doesn't always work on kind of changing a tint, but yeah, it's slightly annoying. So I kind of don't use that one because it doesn't seem to work as much anymore. But some models it will. Again, selecting models is just a case of either highlighting a group or picking one, or if you hold down Control, CTRL, you can then select a group of units, a group of models, sorry, because if obviously they are all bunched together in your deployment zone, it kind of might be tricky to kind of just like select by dragging, and then you can pick them out quite easily. Again, these ones haven't got it on properly. There we go. But measure movement's very useful because, as you can see, it just tells you how far the unit is moving in inches as soon as you pick it up, which is kind of quite useful. Something you do have to be kind of aware of is clipping on a model. So it won't always sit with the building. They won't go straight through. As you can see, the base just gets stuck. So one of the things with moving around, right click changes your point of view. The scroll wheel will zoom in and out, so that can help with that. And then if you click the scroll wheel, you can move backwards and forwards, or you can use WASD to do the same, but is a bit slower. So when measuring movement, I know my Solarite wants to go 14. If it's going right up to the building and you're trying to measure something, it might be tricky to do kind of that. You can kind of pivot the angle around and get a better angle to be able to do that. On some of the ruins as well, they, particularly the WTC, UKTC, they have different states, which I can show you with the objective markers, which sometimes the floors might get a bit in the way. You can kind of change the state, and same with the objective marker. So they have 7 states. You have a really useful one for checking whether a model is within kind of that range of the objective marker. So you can change it to that, have a look down and be like, oh yeah, no, it is definitely in there. Or you might have sticky objectives, so you can change it to that one to showcase that. Same for blue, and then you also have terraformed, so an easy way to keep track of that without having to put tokens down. And then you can change it to a 40mm marker, which is probably the least useful. So that is how you can rotate through those. Next step, we'll imagine kind of we deployed the army, they've deployed their army, and over here you have kind of deep strike. So let's say we're for some reason putting a Ravager in there, and the Venom's going to come over here. You then have, I'm going to put this half of this unit into this Venom. Something that can be quite useful is naming the Venoms, or naming whatever the transport's called if you have a lot of them. If you only have one Rhino, it's quite obvious what unit is transported in one thing. So if you right click, here you have the name. If you click there, I can just add Venom 1 at the end, and then it becomes Venom 1. If I click Venom 2, so it becomes very obvious which is which. And sometimes I will do that as well on the Archons or any character within enhancement. So this one has the leech bite plate, so I'm just going to put LBP just to show that that's without enhancement, so it's a lot quicker for me to find which one is which, and also possibly helpful to the opponent. But that's more of a quality life than a necessity. Now, sometimes you'll want to check how far something is from the model, and down here we have the different tools. So you have the grab, which allows you to move. Draw is quite useful, particularly if you're trying to see, do I have line of sight? There we go. So I can, if I at the start of a game for pain tokens, having seen someone else do it, I'll come down here, copy the command point one, paste it, and then have to unlock it so I can rotate it. Whee! Which you can rotate things with Q and E. You are kind of locked to a certain set of degrees. I come in, change that to pain token, and then I kind of have a object, again, go back in and lock it into place, that I can use, that then is currently called pain toke because I can't spell apparently, but it just gives me that reference there, so that I don't have a dice, because I have the tendency to either delete them, move them, or pick them up. So that's kind of useful there as well. Then again with the unit, the pivot kind of thing works for Q and E as well, so kind of turns them around in that way. If the numeric numbers at the top of the keyboard, you can use them to kind of orientate the unit. Need a bigger unit. So 1 puts them in a straight line, 2 puts them into a row, 3 puts them into 3 rows, 4 into 4 rows, 5 into effectively 5 rows, and kind of they're the main ones there. The other kind of numerical things you can do is you can use it to measure distances. So 4, there we go, now it's yellow, that thing we did earlier. Oh, and he's got the yellow highlighted base there, but yeah, very useful in this case. But you can do it so it measures out that distance, which is really useful. However, you do have to be careful with the unit you're using, and I'll showcase that in a second. The other one is the 2 and 3 changes the wound count. So obviously on multi-wound models, so, and I think that is the majority of things there. The only other thing that's quite a useful option is above the dice tray there is some auto kind of things. So something I find very useful is the save and restore position. So if you highlight a unit, click save, you can then move them anywhere, click restore, and it will bring them back. Previously, kind of people had to rewind time, which was a bit of a pain, but it does mean you can kind of test, move a unit, does it kind of get to where I want it to, going that way, no, okay, I need to know where I started from, so that's quite a useful feature there. It also shows you your secondaries to the left of the table. There are then D3s, so if you don't want to roll the D6s and have to think, you can do that, and then it will tell you the total there. So if you're rolling 5d3, it will kind of give you the total there, 2d3, total of 5. So quite useful for that. Again, the bin, it'll also show you your opponent's dice roller here. You can also put a battle shock token on a model. If you click left click, sorry, it goes above the model, right click, it sits next to it, and then you can right click and delete once they're no longer battle shocked. So useful for just that status kind of thing, or if you tend to forget your unit has advanced, you can do exactly the same thing with that. Delete once no longer necessary. The other what features on this bit here is you have those automatic circles. You can clear them. Again, the 4 and the oh, they're not working now, but the 4 and the 5 kind of thing does the same thing. Again, sometimes there's slight errors with that, which is a bit annoying. Or if you need the models to be exactly 1 inch or 2 inches apart, maybe you're screening, can do that with them. But yeah, that's kind of the main features of this. If you're playing a game against an opponent and need to stop and start again, you can save game, you can come to here again, call it whatever you like, save it, you know, with their name. I've saved obviously a few where I've set the board up in advance, ready for it, or playing someone, a friend called Dom, just call it that. It references obviously the date and the time you saved it. It will also auto save every so often, which is quite useful because it will actually sometimes crash out if the server gets overloaded. Another one that's useful is here we have the Rhino, which as you can see keeps to the shape. These are slightly more accurate than the Venoms. They're not perfect, but they are closer. By default it will however show you a circle. If you click 8 on the shape, it will actually give you the right shape for that, for square boxy vehicles. So yeah, that's the only other thing that's kind of useful, is the shape changing there. You might also find if it's not the right shape, you can actually change it, on the circles by clicking 7. As you can see, the base underneath is kind of changing. Some of the bikes are sometimes slightly wrong, so that can be useful for that. But yeah, I think that kind of covers everything there. Just checking around the board to make sure there's nothing else I missed. These are quite useful. Table quarters for different secondaries, deployment zone. If you need to see them again for secondaries, strat reserve, can turn them on and off. The 9-inch zone I don't think is used anymore because that secondary doesn't exist. And then also area denial. Area denial one's also quite useful for showing if you're within range to do like established locus. But yeah, that kind of is the main features there. There are probably